Beyond the Map, the Mount Analogue Revelation. Episode 2, Into the Blue Unknown. 1. The Rhythm of the Sea. The first few days at sea established a rhythm. The Calliope cut through relatively calm waters as it headed southwest, leaving behind the busy shipping lanes near California. Each morning, Miles would gather everyone in the ship's small conference room, really just a converted storage area with a table and some bolted-down chairs, and outline the day's objectives. Dan Shirakawa would present satellite data updates, noting any anomalies or suspicious weather patterns. Meredith Oster would discuss sea current models, ensuring they compensated for the unpredictable eddies in the equatorial and sub-equatorial zones. Carlos Estevez kept the submersible drone in top shape, running daily tests of its cameras and manipulator arms. Jamie Rooney would take careful notes, continuing her personal diary whenever she found a free moment. By the fourth day, the usual serenity of open ocean research set in. The horizon remained a constant circle around them. The sun often bore down with punishing intensity, turning the deck scorching hot by midday. Salt spray and the smell of brine permeated every corner of the vessel. At night, they encountered a dome of stars so brilliant that some nights they simply stood on deck, heads tilted back, in awe of the cosmos. Yet beneath this everyday routine lay a subtle tension, the sense that they were chasing a phantom. A few old salts among the ship's hired crew looked at their instruments with skepticism, muttering that they'd never heard of an undiscovered island in this region. But for Miles, each day the boat advanced deeper into the Pacific was one step closer to validating or refuting his grand hypothesis. 2. The first omen: equipment anomalies. On the 8th day, they entered an area of the South Pacific known for relatively stable weather patterns and few shipping routes. This region was part of a massive expanse of open water, typically not traversed by commercial vessels unless absolutely necessary. Oddly enough, as soon as the Calliope crossed into these coordinates, Dan noticed that their high-precision GPS readings started to fluctuate erratically. Dan: I'm getting weird data. The satellite link is still strong, but the coordinates are drifting by up to half a mile every few minutes. Miles, frowning: that shouldn't be happening. Even with basic standard error, we're talking about a discrepancy that's an order of magnitude too large. Meredith: magnetic anomalies, or local interference from something else. They tried to recalibrate the instruments, but the anomalies persisted. Dan cross-checked with the ship's inertial navigation system. That system showed stable data, indicating the boat's position was not actually drifting, so the error appeared to be in the external satellite signals themselves. Meanwhile, a subtle haze began to develop on the horizon, like a faint curtain of low-lying fog. The ship's weather radar picked up no immediate threat, no storms on the near horizon. Yet the barometric pressure was shifting in a pattern that defied normal explanations. Meredith recorded the data, perplexed. That evening, as Jamie sat in her bunk, she wrote in her diary, March 14th, day 8 at sea. Something odd is happening. Our GPS data keeps glitching. It's almost like we're caught in a region where the signals from orbit go haywire. Dr. Pendleton seems more convinced than ever that this is proof we're nearing the area described in Gaspard's letters. I'm not yet convinced, but part of me can't help feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. Third storm warnings. On the 9th day, the unexpected arrived in full force, a massive storm system that seemed to materialize almost out of nowhere. By midday, the Calliope's meteorological instruments began shrieking with warnings: falling pressure, rapid wind speed increases, and a swirling mass of cloud formations on the radar. Meredith, urgent: we have a tropical-style depression forming right in our path. That's not normal for this latitude at this time of year. We need to divert. She pointed to the monitor showing a weather radar image, a swirling vortex of red, orange, and yellow, signifying high wind speeds and intense precipitation. Miles. Divert to where? We're hundreds of miles from any known island or major shipping lane. We can't outrun it easily. The crew scrambled to batten down the hatches. Carlos made sure the submersible drone was secured. Dan powered down sensitive electronics. The wind picked up with shocking speed, howling across the deck. Within hours, towering black clouds blanketed the sky, punctuated by flashes of lightning that illuminated the rolling seas in strobe-like bursts. When the storm hit, the Calliope lurched and groaned under the assault. Waves, easily 15 to 20 feet high, crashed against the hull. Water spilled onto the deck in torrents, and the ship's navigation lights flickered ominously as lightning struck close by, scorching the air with ozone. Down in the conference room, the group huddled in life vests. Meredith studied the radar, her face pale. Meredith. This system came from nowhere. It wasn't on any of the extended forecasts. It's like a microcyclone. Miles, steadying himself against a table. Could it be related to local anomalies? Gaspard's notes mentioned sudden storms, an environment that hides the island behind shifting weather patterns. Thunder boomed, shaking the very bones of the vessel. For a moment, no one spoke. In those seconds, each person wrestled with the possibility that they were venturing into phenomena that modern science had not adequately mapped or explained. Fourth landfall through the fog. After nearly 6 hours of pounding turbulence, the storm eventually subsided, leaving the Calliope battered but still afloat. In the storm's wake, they found themselves engulfed by a thick, milky fog. Visibility dropped to less than 50 feet. The sea itself became eerily calm, as if they had entered the eye of some persistent meteorological anomaly. Captain Hansen, the ship's hired captain, over the intercom. We're adrift until we can get some bearings. I can't see a damn thing out here, and the radar is giving me ghost signals. Everyone remain on standby. Miles and Meredith made their way to the bridge. The sun was setting behind the fog, turning the sky an otherworldly shade of violet. Captain Hansen, a stout man with a weathered face, peered through the windows in frustration. Captain Hansen, I've never seen fog like this. It's as if we sailed straight into a wall of clouds, and the strangest thing is, there might be land nearby. Miles, eyes widening. Land? Are you sure? Captain Hansen, we've got faint echoes on sonar, indicating a shallow seafloor in some directions, like it rises abruptly. Could be a reef or a shoreline, but we can't confirm anything with this visibility. They decided to proceed slowly, creeping forward at minimal speed. The crew prepared for potential landfall, stationing lookouts at various points on the deck. Hour after hour, the fog persisted, refusing to lighten even as the night wore on. Then, at around 1 a.m., a voice crackled over the ship's speaker. Captain, we have sight of land off the starboard bow. Everyone rushed to the starboard side. Through the veil of fog, silhouettes of palm-like trees and jagged rocks materialized. The sense of awe was immediate. An island loomed, uncharted and unclaimed, just as Miles had predicted. The Calliope carefully inched closer. Eventually, they dropped anchor in what appeared to be a small cove, guided more by instrumentation than by actual sight. That night, no one slept well. Despite the excitement, there was an undercurrent of fear. The sudden storm, the thick fog, the uncharted landmass, they all felt like jigsaw pieces of a greater puzzle, one with cosmic or clandestine overtones. 5. The Morning Survey. At dawn, the fog began to thin. Sunlight filtered through in golden shards, revealing a rocky shoreline fringed by dark sand. Behind this beach, dense green foliage stretched upwards, climbing low hills or perhaps even mountains. The topography was difficult to discern under the lingering mist. Miles was the first to set foot on the island. He stepped off the inflatable dinghy and felt damp sand give way under his boots. He looked back at the rest of the landing party, Meredith, Jamie, Dan, and Carlos, who joined him. A few of the Calliope's crew also came ashore to help set up a temporary base camp. The air felt different, charged with a subtle energy that none of them could quite pinpoint. Even the birds that circled overhead, black shapes cutting arcs through the haze, seemed out of place, as if watching them with a sentient curiosity. Miles, kneeling, picking up a handful of sand. I can't believe it. It's actually here. Dan. So, what does that mean for your theories about Daumal and Gaspar? Miles. It means they were right, at least partially. Let's not forget Gaspar's mention of a US Navy presence. We have to be cautious. They split into two teams. Miles led Jamie and Dan to scout the immediate vicinity, while Meredith took Carlos inland to collect soil and vegetation samples. They agreed to maintain radio contact every 30 minutes. 6. Clues of a military presence. Within an hour of trudging inland through dense undergrowth, Miles, Jamie, and Dan discovered something startling. A rusted metal structure partially hidden by vines and thick foliage. It resembled the corner of a prefabricated steel bunker, typical of mid-20th century military designs. A faded stencil on the metal read, USN. Miles, eyes wide. It's exactly like Gaspar's letters suggested. The US Navy must have established a facility here, but why is it abandoned? They carefully approached, pushing aside tangled vines. The structure seemed old, with rivets corroded by decades of exposure. Dan found a padlock on what looked like a hatch, but it had rusted shut long ago. They tried to peer inside through cracks in the steel plating. The interior was pitch black, with no signs of immediate life. Jamie. Could be anything. An outpost, a storage depot, or part of a larger base. The fact that it's deserted is weird. If it was a secret, they might have hidden it better or maintained it. Miles. Or maybe they built a newer facility elsewhere on the island. This could just be a relic. Let's keep an eye out. Jamie recorded the coordinates in her diary, while Dan snapped photographs with a digital camera. They moved on, hearts pounding with curiosity and perhaps a tinge of dread. 7. A deeper mystery. Meanwhile, Meredith and Carlos stumbled upon an even more unnerving clue. A chain-link fence partially collapsed, with barbed wire at the top. It stood in a clearing about half a mile from the beach. A battered sign hung from the fence, reading, "Restricted area, U.S. government property, no trespassing." Meredith, whispering, "This place was definitely used by the military. The sign is mostly intact. I doubt it's from World War II. It looks more modern." Carlos, agreed. The font style and the materials suggest something post-1950s, maybe from the 1960s or 70s. Could be older, but it's definitely not World War II era. They took pictures, then ducked through a gap in the fence, stepping into a large, overgrown compound. Concrete slabs jutted out of the ground, possibly the foundations of demolished buildings. Scattered debris, some old crates, rusted barrels, lay half buried in the soil. What caught Carlos's eye was a small metallic canister with faded markings. He brushed the dirt off to reveal a partial label. LSD-25, followed by experimental use only. His hands trembled slightly. Carlos. Meredith. You need to see this. Meredith. LSD-25? That's the classic LSD compound discovered by Albert Hofmann in the 30s, used in CIA experiments in the 50s and 60s. Why would it be here? They traded uneasy glances. Gaspar's final letter had mentioned a plant with psychoactive properties, a substance that the Navy wanted to study. If LSD was here, perhaps the US military had tried to compare the plant's compound to known psychedelics. A swirl of possibilities flooded Meredith's mind. This island was shaping up to be more than just a geological or cartographic mystery. It might be a nexus for clandestine research into mind-altering substances. 8. Reunion at base camp. By late afternoon, both teams reconvened at the temporary camp near the beach. They shared their findings: the half-buried bunker, the fenced compound, the LSD canister. Miles's expression went from shock to grim determination. Miles: "There's no doubt about it. This is the site Gaspard hinted at. We've found physical evidence of US military presence. We need to press further inland to see if there's an active facility that's still functional. For all we know, the entire island could be under covert surveillance." Meredith: "We have to be extremely careful. If the Navy or some Black Ops division is still here, we could be in serious trouble just by being on shore. This might be a no-go zone." Yet the group collectively decided to push on. They hadn't come all this way to turn around at the first sign of government secrecy. That evening, they set up a more permanent camp, complete with a couple of portable generators to power floodlights and charging stations for their electronics. The Calliope remained anchored in the cove, ready to evacuate them if necessary. 9. Eerie nightfall. Night fell quickly, bringing with it a sense of isolation that was nearly suffocating. Crickets and frogs created a chorus in the underbrush, and occasionally a strange howling noise echoed through the trees, reminiscent of some unknown mammal. The group gathered around a small campfire to plan the next day's explorations. Over freeze-dried meals, they discussed strategy. Dan: "We should map the perimeter of that fenced compound. Try to figure out if there's a main building or command center. We can also do some drone flights over the island's interior, but the canopy might be too thick for good visual data." Carlos: "The submersible drones are worthless on land, but I could retrofit one with better air-based navigation. Might take a day or two. Alternatively, we can do a foot survey." Jamie: "Let's not forget we also want plant samples. Gaspard mentioned a unique species. We saw plenty of flora, but it all looked normal at first glance." Meredith, nodding: "We should collect systematically. I'll design a sampling grid, maybe focusing near streams or low-lying areas. Psychedelic compounds often originate in fungi or certain flowering plants." Miles listened, proud of how the team had come together. Despite the bizarre circumstances, they were proceeding like scientists, methodical, data-driven, and cautious. Yet the stirring in his chest told him that tomorrow might bring discoveries none of them could fully prepare for. 10. The fog's ominous return. Around midnight, the fog came rolling back in with unnatural swiftness, coalescing around the camp and masking the moon. Visibility dropped to near zero once again. Standing watch by the camp perimeter, one of the ship's crew members swore he heard footsteps in the jungle. When he aimed his flashlight in that direction, he saw nothing but swirling mist. Jamie, who was still awake writing in her diary, recorded, March 15th, night. "The fog is as thick as soup. Everyone feels uneasy. It's not just the isolation. It's something about this island. The storm, the abandoned structures, the LSD canister. It all points to a deeper secret. Dr. Pendleton is convinced we're on the brink of unveiling something monumental, but a part of me wonders if we're in over our heads." As the camp's floodlights cast a ghostly glow into the swirling mist, the team realized they were on the threshold of revelations that might upend their understanding of reality. For if there truly was a super-secret research facility hidden here, an operation that possibly harnessed a plant with psychoactive properties thousands of times more potent than LSD, they would soon confront forces that blurred the line between rigorous science and what one might call the mystical. Unbeknownst to them, watchers in the shadows were already aware of their presence, quietly observing this new band of intruders, scientists, dreamers, and students of the unknown, who had dared to breach the island's veil of secrecy.